Sebastian Vettel. The moment Sebastian Vettel decided his own ego was more important than the explicit instructions of his team remains one of the most stunning acts of insubordination in modern F1. It was the 2013 Malaysian Grand Prix, and Red Bull was leading a commanding 1-2. Mark Webber was ahead, with Vettel following closely behind. The team radioed the codified instruction, multi-21, meaning car number 2, Webber, stays ahead of car number 1, Vettel, to secure the team's perfect result and conserve the engines. The race was settled, but Vettel was not settling. He had a champion's hunger, yes, but this was darker. A deep-seated refusal to acknowledge his teammates' earned position. He saw a win being gifted away and believed he deserved it more. As they entered the final third of the race, Vettel ignored the instruction, ignored the furious shouts from the pit wall, and launched a desperate, dangerous wheel-to-wheel attack. He used the DRS, forcing Webber to defend with frightening aggression. Vettel finally made the move stick, stealing the win, but at a catastrophic cost. In the cool-down room, the air was poison. Webber famously called it multi-21 Seb, multi-21, repeating the team order in cold fury. Vettel's selfishness wasn't just about ignoring team orders, it was a public declaration of personal supremacy over corporate loyalty. He looked his teammate, his team, and the entire paddock in the eye and said, "I don't care about the collective good, only my victory." The act shattered the relationship, defined that season, and instantly destroyed any remaining trust between the two drivers, forcing a furious and awkward post-race ceremony that remains excruciating to watch. The win felt hollow, tainted by the selfishness that prioritized one man's tally over the harmony and integrity of the entire Red Bull racing machine. Michael Schumacher. Monaco is the stage for calculated cunning, and in 2006, Michael Schumacher delivered a masterclass in selfish manipulation that left the entire sport disgusted. During the final moments of qualifying, with the battle for pole position at its peak, Schumacher was momentarily fastest, but Fernando Alonso was on a hot lap that looked certain to beat him. As Alonso approached the Rascasse corner, the final chicane before the long run to the line, Schumacher drove his Ferrari into the barrier, stopping dead. He claimed it was a genuine error, a misjudgment. The telemetry and the location, however, screamed otherwise. The car was positioned perfectly to block the track, forcing the yellow flags to wave, and thereby destroying Alonso's lap and everyone else's. It was a cold, clinical, and brilliant act of premeditated selfishness. Schumacher knew the rules. A yellow flag in the final sector meant no one could improve their time. He sacrificed his car's front wing to secure pole position, manipulating the rules of the session for personal gain. The stewards were ruthless, stripping him of all his qualifying times and forcing him to start last. The selfishness was exposed not by the crash itself, but by the utter lack of genuine surprise from anyone who knew Schumacher's history. It was the ultimate expression of winning at any cost, a decision that prioritized a single pole position by deliberately wrecking the fairness of the competition for his rivals. Ayrton Senna. To understand the selfishness of Ayrton Senna in 1990, you must understand the year before. In 1989, Senna felt cheated out of the title by the FIA's controversial decision to disqualify him. He was a man obsessed with justice, but his justice was personal. Arriving at Suzuka in 1990, the scenario was simple. If Senna or his rival, Alain Prost, crashed out, the title would be decided by the outcome Senna had taken pole. But due to a perceived unfair advantage on the grid's dirty side, he had pleaded to have the pole position moved to the clean side. The FIA refused. Senna's mind snapped. He resolved that if he wasn't given the advantage he felt he deserved, he would take the title by any means necessary. When the lights went out, Prost, starting on the inside, got the better launch. Senna barreled down into the first corner. The cars perfectly aligned. Senna went for the inside line and barely braked, colliding with Prost at the first corner, a move many, including Senna himself later, admitted was intentional. He deliberately took both cars out of the race at over 160 miles per hour. It lasted 10 seconds. Senna was champion. The selfishness here was pure, cold-blooded vengeance. It was a title won, not by skill over a season, but by an intentional, pre-planned collision that showed a staggering disregard for the safety of his rival and the sanctity of the sport. He was willing to risk the lives of both himself and Prost to satisfy his personal vendetta against Prost and the governing body. It was a selfish end that justified inexcusable means. Didier Pironi. The story of the 1982 San Marino Grand Prix Pironi is pure tragedy born from Didier Pironi's monumental selfishness towards his teammate, Gilles Villeneuve. Ferrari was dominating the race, and with the field spread out due to a boycott, the team decided to flash the slow sign from the pit wall. A gentleman's agreement, meaning the drivers were to hold position and cruise home for an easy 1-2 finish. Villeneuve, leading the race, faithfully obeyed. He slowed down, waving Pironi past, believing they were simply putting on a show for the crowd, before Pironi returned the position on the last lap. But Pironi had different plans. He saw an opportunity to steal a win he could not have otherwise claimed. Lap after lap, he aggressively passed Villeneuve. Villeneuve, utterly confused and enraged, believed Pironi was playing a game of chicken, so he fought back. On the final lap, Villeneuve, trying to reclaim his stolen lead, was surprised again Pironi braked earlier, then cut back, confusing Villeneuve enough for Pironi to take the checkered flag. The selfishness of Pironi was the ultimate breach of trust. He took advantage of his teammate's honorable nature, prioritizing a single hollow race victory over the unwritten code of racing and the relationship he shared with Villeneuve. Villeneuve felt so betrayed that he swore he would never speak to Pironi again. 2 weeks later, driven by that same blinding rage and desperate desire to show Pironi he was faster, Villeneuve was killed in a high-speed crash during qualifying at Zolder. Pironi's selfish act was not just a sporting foul, it was the trigger for a devastating, fatal chain of events. Fernando Alonso. The 2007 season at McLaren was a viper's nest, and the Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying session saw Fernando Alonso commit an act of raw, spiteful, calculated selfishness against his rookie teammate, Lewis Hamilton. The drivers were lining up for their final, crucial flying laps. Hamilton refused a direct order to let Alonso pass in the pit lane earlier in the session, forcing Alonso to wait a lap before starting his final fuel-burning run. Alonso, seething with resentment, engineered the perfect payback. He pitted for tires and fuel, pulling into his box. Hamilton queued directly behind him. Knowing the timing was critical, Alonso simply sat still in his pit box for an agonizing 10 seconds after his tire change was complete. The clock ticked down, eating up the time Hamilton needed to get to the grid and start his own final qualifying lap. The blatant, deliberate stalling ensured that when Alonso finally pulled away, Hamilton missed the cutoff by seconds. Alonso took pole, and Hamilton, having failed to set a final time, was locked into his previous grid position. The selfishness here was premeditated sabotage of a teammate's competitive opportunity. It wasn't about winning a race. It was about ensuring his rival did not have a chance to compete. The stewards agreed, penalizing Alonso with a 5-place grid drop and preventing McLaren from scoring constructors' points that weekend. It was a desperate, malicious act, exposing the ugly lengths Alonso would go to in order to ensure his own dominance within the team, burning the bridge to any future partnership in the process. Lewis Hamilton. While Hamilton's career is defined by brilliance, the closing moments of the 2016 season revealed a ruthless, selfish streak when the chips were down. Heading into the final race in Abu Dhabi, Lewis Hamilton needed to win, and for his teammate and title rival, Nico Rosberg, to finish off the podium, Hamilton had the lead and was driving perfectly. The problem was that Rosberg was comfortably running in second. Hamilton's solution was an act of pure, individualistic rebellion. He deliberately slowed the pace of the race in the final laps. He backed the pack up, specifically allowing the faster cars of Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen to close in on Rosberg. The slower speed meant the chasing rivals could use the slipstream to attack Rosberg and potentially knock him down to third or fourth. The Mercedes pit wall was frantic, radioing Hamilton repeatedly with increasingly desperate team orders. "Lewis, this is Patty. We need you to pick up the pace." "That is an instruction." Hamilton's famous defiant response was, "I suggest you let us just race." He was willing to risk the team's guaranteed 1-2 finish and jeopardize the race win just to secure his own title. His selfishness was an intentional sacrifice of team objectives for the highest personal prize. He turned the season-ending Grand Prix into a high-stakes psychological game, using the team's own cars and the race structure as weapons against his teammate. Though the tactic ultimately failed to displace Rosberg, the defiance and the willingness to throw the team's strategy into chaos remain a shocking example of a driver prioritizing personal glory above all else. Max Verstappen. In the closing stages of the 2022 Brazilian Grand Prix, with the championship long secured, Max Verstappen was asked by Red Bull to yield his his position to teammate Sergio Perez, who was locked in a tight battle with Charles Leclerc. For second place in the Drivers' Championship, Perez desperately needed the points. Verstappen, running just ahead, was told to let him through on the final lap. Verstappen refused, crossing the line ahead of Perez and denying him 2 crucial championship points. His radio message was curt and delivered with an immediate finality that stunned the pit wall. "I told you already, guys, don't ask that again." Are we clear about that? I gave my reasons. The selfishness here was unnecessary and unprovoked. Verstappen had absolutely nothing to gain personally from the position, yet he prioritized a minor place in a meaningless race over the interests of his teammate, who had worked tirelessly as his wingman all season. The sheer lack of gratitude or team spirit caused a public schism in the Red Bull garage. Perez was furious, immediately suggesting that Verstappen's selfishness had revealed who he truly is. Verstappen later claimed the refusal stemmed from a long-ago incident, but the decision on that Sunday was a stark reminder that even the most dominant drivers will sometimes choose personal grievances over the collective success, leaving a wake of resentment that threatened to undermine the team's future harmony. Esteban Ocon. The 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix was supposed to be Max Verstappen's defining win, but a selfish act from a lapped driver stole the victory. Esteban Ocon, driving for Force India, was running 1 lap down on fresher tires. As race leader Verstappen came upon him, Ocon decided completely unnecessarily that he was going to unlap himself. This is not only against the common racing convention of allowing the leader to pass cleanly, but Ocon executed the maneuver aggressively, going wheel to wheel with the leader, forcing Verstappen to defend entering the Senna S's. Ocon refused to concede and drove into the side of Verstappen's Red Bull. Verstappen spun off, losing the lead to Lewis Hamilton, and dropping to second with a damaged car. Ocon's motivation was pure, petty selfishness. He had fresh tires and simply felt he was faster, justifying a completely unwarranted battle with the race leader over a position that literally meant nothing to his own race result. The stewards gave Ocon a punitive 10-second stop-go penalty, confirming he was completely at fault. The fallout was immediate and violent, culminating in an angry physical confrontation between Verstappen and Ocon in the weighbridge area. Ocon's desire to gain a meaningless lap back destroyed the race leader's potential victory and proved a colossal act of self-interest with devastating consequences for his rival. Nigel Mansell. The 1991 season saw Nigel Mansell in a fierce title fight with Ayrton Senna, and the Portuguese Grand Prix exposed a moment of dangerous, desperate selfishness. Mansell was leading the race comfortably and came into the pits for his tire stop. The stop was an unmitigated disaster. The right rear wheel was not properly fitted, and it came loose as he pulled away. He stopped short of the pit exit. What followed was a moment of panicked, instinctive selfishness to save his race. Knowing that his championship hopes were literally rolling away, Mansell ignored all rules and basic safety protocols and slammed the Williams into reverse gear, backing up into his pit box so his mechanics could reattach the wheel. Reversing in the pit lane is one of the most cardinal and dangerous sins in Formula One. Risking the lives of every mechanic and marshal present, Mansell's personal title ambition instantly outweighed any concern for safety or the rulebook. The stewards, recognizing the flagrant violation of safety, immediately gave him the black flag, disqualifying him from the race. The selfish risk-taking was clear. He was willing to endanger others just to keep his own chance of victory alive, a panicked decision that ultimately cost him dearly in the championship standings. Nelson Piquet Jr. This moment transcends simple selfishness and enters the realm of criminal manipulation, but the driver's intent was ultimately centered on self-preservation and personal gain. Nelson Piquet Jr., driving for the Renault team in 2008, was pressured by his team boss, Flavio Briatore, to deliberately crash his car at a specific difficult-to-clear point on the brand-new Singapore street circuit. The purpose? To trigger a safety car that would gift the race to his teammate, Fernando Alonso, who had pitted early on a light fuel load. Piquet Jr. agreed to the plan. Why? Because the pressure to perform and keep his seat at Renault was immense. His agreement to deliberately drive his car into the wall was an ultimate act of career selfishness and cowardice. He sacrificed the integrity of the sport, the safety of the marshals and other drivers, and fair play, all in the desperate hope that that delivering a victory for the team would secure his drive for the following season. On lap 14, Piquet Jr. delivered, crashing spectacularly and bringing out the safety car, which directly led to Alonso winning the race. The deliberate nature of the crash was not revealed until a year later, but the selfishness that motivated Piquet Jr. to act as a pawn in this dark scheme, prioritizing his contract over all sporting ethics, makes it one of the most egregious acts on this list. The consequences were staggering, costing Felipe Massa the World Championship in 2008 and leading to the eventual long-term bans of the team principals involved.